My name is Barney Rosenberg. I guess we're all getting, the judges will introduce ourselves, and then I've got a short series of notes about how the proceedings will take place. My name is Barney Rosenberg. I'm a recovering lawyer, retired very recently. After college, I joined the Peace Corps and spent 2 years in Brazil, where I started a housing co-op among some very poor folks who were able to buy the land they lived on for the first time in the history of their families through the co-op. I became fluent in Portuguese, and during law school and long after, I worked as an interpreter for the State Department, traveling with guests of the U.S. government, and I've lectured in Portuguese all over the world, in Brazil, Angola, Mozambique, places like that where the first language is Portuguese. And I've only been doing the judging at this competition for 23 years. Okay, next Joe. Joseph.
I'm Jason West.
Oh,
I'm sorry. I didn't.
Oh,
I heard a Jason, not a Joe. Go ahead, Joe.
okay, no problem. Hi, everyone. My name is Joe Vargas. I too am a lawyer, although I'm still practicing, so I'm not recovering quite yet. Been practicing for about 20 years here out of the West Coast, and doing primarily real estate, but I do some other areas as well. And I look forward to your presentation.
Jason.
Hello, Mann Consulting and fellow judges. I'm Jason West. I'll borrow the verbiage here. I'm a recovering graduate student, in so much as I'm a proud graduate of Loyola Marymount University with their MBA program from 2015. And subsequent to graduation, I have been asked and honored to participate in this panel for the last 7 years now. So I run my own marketing consulting firm in Los Angeles. And other than that, look very much forward to hearing from this Mann Consulting and learning more about what your project is all about.
Okay, then, as you know, in this part of the competition,
Barney?
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Lori.
Did you want me to go? Sorry, you're
Please.
breaking up. Sorry, okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Hi, I'm Lori Sims, and I am an undergraduate of Loyola Marymount and a graduate student of Pepperdine University. Started in marketing and transitioned into OD, and I'm currently a management consultant in Los Angeles, working on everything from culture to talent, change management, org effectiveness, and DEI work. And I've been in this OD space for about 20 years, primarily in the financial services industry, and now moving into gaming and tech. So I'm really excited to be a part of this. This is my first year, and was excited to get the invitation and looking forward to your presentation today. Thank you.
Terrific. Anybody else? Did I miss? Sorry. So anyhow, in this part of the competition, students, you are taking on a fictional business identity. And you're assigning to us, the judges, likewise, a fictional identity. And I can see from your summary that we are the board of directors of Meta. So please make sure everybody knows who you are and who we are. You have 25 minutes to do your presentation of the legal, financial, and ethical dimensions of the problem you've identified, and to recommend a solution that passes muster on all 3 counts. And during these 25 minutes, you will not be interrupted. When that's over, though, the judges get about 10 to 15 minutes to ask you probing questions, again, still in character as our role on the board of directors. After those Q&As, we will all stop, take a deep breath, and hopefully give you some feedback. So with that said, tell me when you're ready and I'll start the clock.
Great, I think we're ready to begin. Okay, so good afternoon. Thank you for joining us, Mann Consulting. We look forward to presenting how Meta's current content moderation practices can be revised to both optimize content review operations and reaffirm Meta's commitment to uphold the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So first, I want to introduce our team. We are Man Consulting, and we specialize in sustainability advising. Our team is comprised of Hung Fung, Bridget Wang, Cindy Wang, and myself. And so far as today's agenda, I will start by introducing Facebook's current practices in content moderation. Hung will then discuss the problems associated with those current practices, and Bridget will relay how those problems are in tension with the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. Then Cindy will present our solution and its components. And finally, I will discuss how our solution improves Meta's operations and commitment to sustainable practices. So the first question is, what is content moderation? So it's a process of reviewing user-posted content to ensure the content itself agrees with the platform's stated guidelines. The review process is listed on the slide here. First, a user will post content to the site. That content is either flagged by an algorithm or reported by site users. Then a secondary algorithm, and often in conjunction with a trained human moderator, will review that post. And that moderator ultimately determines the post's appropriateness and subsequently removes, demotes, supplements, or permits the post. And just for some context, 2.5 million posts were removed in a single month on the platform. And so who does the moderating? Well, Meta employs 15,000 moderators who primarily work in the United States or Sub-Saharan Africa. The US-based moderators typically review text-based violations, while Sub-Saharan moderators review images and graphic content. Notably, Meta contracts with third parties for most content review operations. And so what is the problem with current practices? Evident in the displayed headlines, Meta maintains harmful working conditions which violate labor standards, generate bad press, and hurt company operations. Furthermore, from an ethical perspective, it is important to note that Meta is asking its moderators to continuously view content which the company deems too harmful to be shown to users and to the public. And so now Hung will discuss the three main issues with current practices.
Currently, there are three main issues associated with the current practices. One being working conditions and wage. The second is mental health, and final one is employee dissatisfaction. I will start by talking about working condition and wage. According to a research by Time magazine, in an office in Nairobi, Kenya, 200 employees originating across Africa work as a content moderator for SEMA, a regulation company whose most important partner is Meta. They must watch and regulate toxic content, including murders, rapes, suicide, and child abuse. So no matter how disturbing the content, a moderator must decide within 50 seconds whether to take down or leave up the material. If a moderator takes too long reviewing each piece of content, he might be reprimanded by his team leader. And if the problem persists, he will be pulled off of working for SEMA's contract with Meta and put on an internal training program instead. While SEMA employees wellness counselors provide workers with on-site care in Nairobi, most of the content moderators Tam spoke to said they generally distract the counselor. Despite the importance of their work, employees in this office are among the lowest paid workers for the platform, not only in the African region, but also in the world. According to payslips seen by Time, SEMA pays foreign employees monthly salary of around $440 per month, or a take-home wage of roughly $2.2 per hour. SEMA employees from within Kenya who are not paid the monthly relocation bonus receive a take-home equivalent of around $1.46 per hour. These wages only cover the basic costs of living and don't allow them to save or improve their financial situation. And as a result, content moderators at SEMA are leaving. The most notable example being 6 Ethiopians resigning in just 1 week of January. So examining another case, moderator in Cognizant, another Meta's partner in Phoenix, Arizona, will make just $28,000 per year. while the average Facebook employee has a total compensation of around $240,000. It means that they receive an hourly salary of $15, roughly 4 more than the Arizona's minimum wage. Next, I will talk about mental health. This time we dive deep into the story of Isabel Plunkett, who has worked for Covalent, one of Meta's largest contractor in Ireland, as a content moderator. She could not speak to her friends or family about the things she saw at work due to a non-disclosure agreement, also known as NDA. NDAs are the standard practices, and reviewers can discuss any aspect of their jobs with doctors and counselors only. However, they can still discuss the general challenges and rewards of the job with their family, but not specific details of the contents they are reviewing. Meta says psychological help is available to all its moderators 24 hours a day, but Isabella claimed its wellness coaches are not qualified psychiatrists. Subcontract staff are given 1.5 hours of wellness time a week, which can be used for speaking to a wellness coach, going for walks, or taking time out when they feel overwhelmed. However, Isabella claimed that it was not enough, and there's no way to reverse engineer the ingrained content in her mind. On the other hand, in summer, on a typical working day, employees are expected to spend around 8 hours logging into Meta's content moderation program. On such a day, they have to regulate a daily quota of nearly 600 items. Content moderators at SEMA are meant to receive wellness break at least an hour a week. However, some employees describe them having to beg to be allowed to their wellness breaks. A former counselor said that SEMA managers, not the counselor themselves, had the final say over when and whether content moderators were allowed to take breaks. The counselor witnessed manager repeatedly rejecting content moderators' requests for breaks, citing productivity pressures. SEMA is more interested in productivity than the safety of the moderator. Finally, I want to talk about employee dissatisfaction. The first problem occurs is a wage discrimination. Kenyan employees said that it was unfair. They were paid around 30% less than the foreign colleagues in their offices. And dissatisfaction leads to the next one, which is unionization suppression. To provide some background, Kenyan labor says that employees are protected from dismissal as a result of past, present, and anticipated trade union membership. And the Kenyan constitution says that every worker has the right to go on strike. However, workers say that SEMA has suppressed their efforts to secure better working conditions. In the summer of 2019, content moderators threatened to strike within 7 days unless they were given better pay and working conditions. Instead of negotiating, SEMA responded by flying two highly paid executives from San Francisco to Nairobi to deal with the uprising. So within weeks, Daniel Motang, the man you can see in the picture, he's the attempt strike leader, had been fired, accused by SEMA of taking action that would put the relationship between the company and Meta at risk. SEMA told other participants that in the labor action that they were expendable. So the worker has no other chance but to stand down before the 7 days were up, and there was no pay increase. However, on a brighter note, in a recent update by TechCrunch, just at the end of last month, Meta and SEMA are facing a lawsuit in Kenya over alleged unsafe and unfair working conditions if they fail to meet 12 demands on workplace conditions brought before them. The law firm representing Daniel Motang accused the subcontractor of violating various rights, including that of health and privacy of Kenyan and international staff. Like, I'll pass it on to my colleague Bridget to talk about the implication of the current practices.
The problems identified in Meta's moderation labor practices must promptly be addressed as they conflict with the goals of SDG 8 put out by the United Nations. SDG 8 seeks to promote sustainable and inclusive economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all. Specifically, the problems align with Target 8.8, which calls on businesses to protect labor rights and promote safe and secure working environments for all types of workers. SDG 8 promotes equitable and humane working environments characterized by fair wages, decent mental health, and workplace equity. However, as seen by the conditions and experiences laid out by Sama employees and former Facebook content moderator Isabella Pluckett, Meta's current moderation practices do not align with the goals of SDG 8. Since Meta has declared the goal to empower people and organizations to advance the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals by 2030, the challenges of the current practices must promptly be addressed. Effects of low wages. Since workers in the Nairobi office are among the lowest paid workers for Facebook anywhere globally, the insufficient wages prompt content moderators in Sama to leave the company. The workers are highly underpaid and struggle to secure the financial means to maintain basic living costs. Even in the office, Kenyan workers are wage discriminated, given that employers pay them 30% less than their other foreign workers. Additionally, employers deny basic medical insurance promised to them. The discrepancy between employee treatment across different Facebook moderation offices hinders the labor rights of content moderators and ultimately contradicts SDG 8's goal to promote inclusive and sustainable economic growth. Under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, employers cannot discriminate based on race, national origin, gender, or religion. However, when Meta wage discriminates Kenyan workers compared to their foreign counterparts, the company violates Title VII. As a result, since certain workers are not paid adequate amounts and even paid less than other employees, they choose to leave the company. A decrease in Kenyan employees hinders Meta's sustainable economic growth because the company loses an essential productive input of content moderation labor supply. Mental health. Given that content moderators might very well comprise as much as half the total workforce for social media sites, it is worth pondering just what the long-term psychological toll this area of work may develop. From the perspective of Isabella Plunkett's experience, as she routinely viewed high-priority queue posts relating to graphic violence, exploitation, extremism, abuse, and suicide, the content became ingrained in her mind. Moreover, since she was an employee that worked directly from the Ireland company office and not from home remotely, Isabella was exposed to more graphic content with high-priority queues than those that work from home. The combination of being denied the opportunity to work from home, although her counterparts were able to, and the rapid exposure to high priority queue content caused her to develop extreme anxiety. She now takes antidepressants to combat her anxiety. Although Facebook says that psychological help is available to all its moderators 24 hours a day, Isabella claims its wellness coaches are not qualified psychiatrists. The psychological trauma that content moderators, such as Isabella, endure working for Facebook's contractors on a daily basis does not align with the safe and secure working environment that SDG 8 seeks to promote. The current state of the working environment does not meet the needs of employees because the range of content that moderators are assigned to view is not distributed evenly between the workers that moderate in person and remotely. This unequal distribution causes certain workers who moderate content in person to develop mental health disorders, which violates their safety and impedes their ability to carry out moderation responsibilities successfully. Additionally, the lack of qualified psychiatrists available to employees contributes to the culmination of unsafe and non-secure company working environments. As a result, certain employees do not have the crucial resources that they need to continue moderating safely. Ultimately, when these workers are unable to efficiently and successfully carry out their job responsibilities due to insufficient working environments, Meta's total economic productivity diminishes. Dissatisfactory employees. In Kenya, the content moderators working at Sama grew so passionate about their insufficient working conditions that they threatened to strike against the company. However, Sama's response to immediately suppress the strike threat, an indication that content moderators are expendable, culminates a detrimental power imbalance between employers and employees that leads to a multitude of economic consequences. The unionization, suppression, and unfair treatment of the content moderators and strike leaders at SAMA violates SDG 8's goal of economic equality. The right to collective bargaining is a key factor in solving the crisis of economic inequality. If content moderators have the ability to bargain collectively with their employers, the division of corporate profits is more equally shared between employees, management, and shareholders. However, when SAMA flew out 2 executives from San Francisco to Nairobi to suppress the potential strike threat from unsatisfied workers without bargains, they disrupted the balance of economic equality. Since the content moderators were not able to exercise their right to collective bargaining, inequality grows and wages stagnate. Other effects may include strained employee relations, slow work processes, lesser economic productivity, and even unnecessary legal hashes. Since SAMA is a regulatory company that is a critical partner to Meta, any strain in the economic equality and productivity of the company ultimately hinders Meta's overall economic growth as well. My colleague Cindy will now discuss our solutions.
Based on the problem in our analysis, our solution can be categorized into the following 3 points. Supplement moderation with additional AI and algorithm, wage transparency, and mental health support, which are related to the information, economic, and ethical perspective. For the software and AI for content moderation, we suggest supplement moderation with the additional AI and algorithms. Firstly, more and more companies prefer automating content moderation. For example, Twitter says it's getting better at detecting abusive tweets without human help, so they use technology to catch more bad tweets. In addition, it is more effective in moderation, as AIs may identify and proactively block high-risk content first before human moderators, which reduces the harm to humans. AI software may also distinguish between extremely graphic and semi-graphic content, highlighting specific depth of words or content and make suggestions. Human content moderation is also necessary for understanding content related to local culture and trends. Secondly, to better protect each moderator, we suggest that the company could give moderators equal viewing of the categories of content. This avoids the extreme scenario that someone takes most of the negative content and hurts mentally. Lastly, we suggest sharing data access to products of scale with smaller contractors. Through collaboration, content moderation can be more effectively done. For wage transparency, firstly, we suggest raising wages. According to the statistics on Glassdoor, the average wage for content moderator is $48,708. However, the range of the wage varies from $7,000 to $798,000. It's helpful to adjust the wage based on the relativeness to local expectations. Secondly, the salary structure. We can learn from the United Nations salary structure with the base salary the same for employees everywhere, but adjusted in the cost of living by multiplying a coefficient. Adjustment can also be made based on their workload. Thirdly, we suggest non-discriminatory wages. It benefits the economy as a whole by providing growth. The economy will have a higher overall GDP as more people are encouraged to work and they will earn more money. As a result, the national wealth increases. It is also helpful in promoting the social justice and providing a higher incentive to work. For the mental health support, firstly, we suggest a counseling system. Our system requires employees to meet with a trained therapist twice a month, which provides a monthly conversation for the employee to express and look for help. Our company, Meta, can also learn from it to know how to improve and change future content moderation policies. The system provides required breaks to reduce the stress of such high-intensive work. Secondly, we would like to extend mental health support. Even after the employee leaves the company, in 1 or 2 years, they still have the access to the company mental health support. This helps them to recover if they leave the job due to the harm and the mental stress. Secondly, we would like to Thirdly, we would like to suggest the at-home work option with the module schedule, providing more flexibility and comfortability to the worker. Fourthly, we suggest the open office layout. It's important since recently Meta and Selma has been sued for alleged poor work condition. According to the workspace design company in the UK, the open office layout has many benefits. It provides a channel of communication, enabling instant reach out and creating a comfortable social atmosphere. It also encourages collaboration as there's no barrier. As Steve Jobs says, ideas don't happen in the boardroom, they happen in the corridors. The open office layout reduces barrier and budget, while also brings more comfortability and happiness. Above the other solutions, we suggest Meta, and the implication will introduce next by my colleague Mark.
Thank you, Cindy. Now I will discuss the projected outcomes of implementing our solution. From an operational perspective, our solution enhances Meta's current practices by reforming moderation protocols and rethinking how employees interact with content under review. These changes in part will help to reshape Meta's reputation, which has been tainted by bad press critical of Meta's current labor practices. Lastly, the implementation of our solution will be a signal of Meta's commitments to advancing sustainable practices and espousing the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. Operationally, it is important to remember how critical moderation is to Meta's user base. In a Business Insider survey, 27% of users indicated they would stop using a platform entirely if the platform did not moderate and remove harmful content. Thus, we must adopt and maintain the most effective moderation strategy. The most effective strategy involves human moderators. A combination of human and algorithmic moderation has an efficacy of 90% compared to a sole AI-based strategy. This sizable discrepancy means that Meta must learn how to fairly employ moderators in order to implement best moderation practices. If implemented, our proposed solution will enhance specific features of current practices. We predict that supplemental algorithms will increase efficacy by 1 to 3%. The supplement's more rigorous filtering aids human moderators in determining content appropriateness. Similarly, the categorization of content, labeling items such as political, abusive, etc., by human moderators generates categorical data which can inform and improve future algorithms. And lastly, the supplemental algorithms will reduce moderators' exposure to obscene content and improve their well-being. Our solution also enhances human capital matters. Maintaining fair wages and implementing an extensive wellness program will encourage Meta to geographically centralize their practices. In this way, centralization makes operational oversight easier. Furthermore, remote work options reduce office overhead costs and support the mental health of Meta employees. These changes in part will retain moderators who are under current conditions have been leading an exodus from the company. Beyond benefiting internally from our solution, Meta will be less liable to litigation about harmful work conditions. Similarly, it will be well prepared to address data handling transparency requests from government oversight boards, especially the European Union. Perhaps most importantly, our solution reaffirms Meta's commitment to the Sustainable Development Goals, particularly SDG number 8. The first of SDG's 8 indicators requires bodies to comply with labor rights dictated by the ILO. In Kenya, Meta's current practices do not comply with these standards and thus are being litigated. Our solution's proposal to raise and maintain non-discriminatory wages would answer the legal complaint and simultaneously fulfill indicator 8.81. Furthermore, additional solution components such as reducing employees' exposure to harmful content and implementing wellness programs align with the decent work tenets of SDG 8. The sustainable benefit of our solution extend beyond SDG 8. A remote work option empowers domestic-based individuals, particularly women in developing countries, to generate income while fulfilling domestic duties. In addition, the successful implementation of our solution will position Meta as a leader in fair labor practices in developing communities. It is morally important that Meta, a company with tremendous resources, sets an example of fair labor for other parties to emulate. This is the conclusion of our presentation. We are confident that Meta will agree with our findings, recognize the value in our solution, and ultimately implement our solution to not only improve company operations, but espouse the Sustainable Development Goals by improving working conditions. Thank you.
Good. Well, thank you for that presentation. But as a board member, I'm a little concerned. Why should we change everything that we do because of one unhappy person in Ireland and a few malcontents in Kenya who just want more money.
So I think those are anecdotes that are widely found. And so you can view them individually as anecdotes, or you could look at the larger data. And in the reports that we had access to, there were trends of individuals leaving the company, particularly in Kenya, because of the low paying wages. And so I would look at the data trends, because the data trends indicate a high turnover rate. And that high turnover rate is not beneficial in a task such as moderation. Moderation, I would argue, is a skilled labor. You have to learn what is and what isn't appropriate. And there's a fine line to dictate. So you just can't constantly train new people. They won't have that kind of historical perspective. And so it should be an incentive for Meta to want to retain its moderators, so it has that legacy in content moderation. And therefore, I would suggest you look at the larger data trends rather than individual anecdotes.
Lori, do you have any questions for this consulting group?
Yes, so when you talked about the shift to AI, I'm curious, when you looked at the cost associated and the benefits associated with that AI and human approach, is that worthy enough when you only talk a 1 to 3% differentiation from increasing from just a human approach to that AI and human approach, considering the cost to implement an AI solution to support that?
Thank you for the question. I think we are using both of the AI. We are using the combination of AI and the human for the content operation. Although there will be the cost of using AI, but I believe the benefits will be a long term. Because of the input we put on AI and also human, it will have more productive content moderation, and I think the benefits will be a long-term growth. And I think it will be beneficial to put AI as more effectively in identify different content and human to know the local culture background. So I believe those two will be more productively and will have higher return.
Jason?
And consulting, my interest was piqued, especially in a lot of the talk of mental health throughout this. And as one of the board of directors, it feels like every month Facebook is inundated, Meta is inundated with claims against us, reputational damage, where we can do better and should do better. And certainly we had $117 billion in revenue in 2021. So it's not that we can't afford it, but in your research, did we find where's the receptivity to mental health support in non-Western countries? Will they be open to receiving this type of support that we may be providing to them, or are we trying to plug a Western approach into a potential solution that doesn't need to exist in this market?
Thank you for the question. We have found that in many of these countries, such as Kenya, the workers are experiencing similar mental health concerns as they would if they were from Western countries such as America. It is very clear from our data gathered that regardless of whether a worker is from a third-party country or from Western countries, they are all struggling the same source of mental health disorders, which is very important for Meta as a whole to address and to deal with the mental health disorders of all its employees.
Second question related to this topic. In your research, were there any findings, any best practices from, globally, we're all aware of what happened with Apple and Foxconn. What best practices could we at Meta leverage to enforce and empower the workforce?
Well, I think listening, as cliche as may sound, these are vocal concerns made by those in Ireland, those in Kenya. And so to empower the workforce is to listen to them first. And as a follow-up to your earlier question, it remains uncertain how successful mental health programs will be in countries where they're not very popular, right? but I think we have to show them what could be done, show them what opportunities they may have and give them those opportunities. And if they ultimately decide not to utilize them, we can go back to the drawing board and maybe come up with a different solution. But we have to provide them with that opportunity in order to like gauge the feasibility of the program.
Joe?
Hi, one, I think, quick one, just maybe a clarification. Is your solution of more AI, is that effectively automation? And are we automating, are we going to employ less humans because the automation is taking that over? I just want to clarify, is that what's going to happen?
Thank you for the question. I think the way that we are combining AI and a human is like we will not cut the human employee, because like another purpose of our goal is to have more attention, to have more care on the employee, but we also want higher productivity. So we suggest to combine AI to moderate first and then human moderate at the second step, so that we can have the higher moderating effectiveness. But we also need a human moderator to understand the local trend, local culture. So human and AI are both important for our moderation.
Okay, so it's more of an efficiency argument, not that we'll need to hire less people.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's more on the efficiency side. Thank you.
Okay. And then the second quick one, sort of building off of Lori's point, the duty to our shareholders, we're board members, and it sounded like we're going to necessarily incur some costs here. I'm trying to maybe help me sell this to a shareholder. Like the benefits, are they going to greatly outweigh the costs we're going to incur, both in the short term and in the long term? Because shareholders care about both. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, if you need to convince a shareholder of how necessary this solution is, I think I would cite the $52 million lawsuit that Facebook is currently paying out as a cost to shareholders themselves. And then also the current legal action in Kenya that is pending. And then I would also cite the statistic that 27% of users said they would leave any platform if the content was not moderated properly. And in the context of Facebook, that's 954 million users, and even more so potential advertising, potential individuals to advertise to. And so the low cost of implementing like the solution, I think is superior to risk losing 954 million users in the long term.
Thank you.
On the legal front, do US laws like Title VII even apply outside the United States?
I would say that given that these workers, whether it's in Isabella Plunkett's case or in Kenya, they all are part of our company as a whole and as Meta as a whole. It is very important that whether it is from a third-party company, if this third-party company is serving Meta as a whole, that they are under the same sort of rights and guarantee the same sort of non-wage discriminations across all borders.
When you're looking
What
at
would you identify as the biggest risk if we decided not to do anything at all? What is the biggest risk to Meta as a corporation if we didn't implement any of the solutions? Playing devil's advocate for a moment.
I mean, I think in the short term, the biggest risk would be its reputation. As you saw on the slide, this is a popular topic to be covered by the press and also experts in technology. And so this is, once again, it's relative to the size and scale of Meta. And so it's relatively inexpensive for Meta to implement compared to the reputational damage it can cause if we continue to like permit these harmful practices. Furthermore, I'm not too familiar with the legality or of the situation, but Meta is an American company, one that has been scrutinized by political bodies. And so this could be another avenue that political bodies could pursue if they want to further scrutinize Meta. And so it's best for Meta to close that avenue as soon as possible.
Lori, you got a question?
And then going back to the wages associated with your proposal, I saw that you were saying that at baseline it was $1 or two for these countries. I'm just curious, what is the going rate in those countries? Because again, having that comparison of America to other countries, it really is proportional. So I want to know if you all looked at what the going rate is in those countries, and then the impact of that rate wage increase is going to have on us, is going to have on the shareholders. And then on the other side of that, what's the human impact in those countries of giving these individuals a higher wage? Again, very different from America to these countries. And if this isn't normal for them, that's a huge change process for them to experience. So the cost side and the human side of a wage increase of that magnitude.
Somebody want to answer that?
So I think to answer the question, the wage improvement is what we use as indicative of being a low wage was that many workers were leaving Meta, and particularly its contractors, to find other work. And so because it wasn't a livable wage. So the exact number that would be relative in the countries around the world in which Meta currently operates its moderation practices, we didn't calculate a specific value for each country, but we did look at the trend saying people are leaving because they said they're not paying enough and they could find better work elsewhere, mind you, better work in developing communities. And we figured, so we have to increase wages to retain the workers pretty much. And then as far as the human cost, this sort of relates to the implications of the solutions beyond Sustainable Development Goal number 8, particularly empowering individuals who work at home, because this enables them to generate income while fulfilling their domestic duties. And we see this as important in developing communities, particularly for women. In developing communities, women are nonprofits often will give marginalized individuals cell phones because it enables people to save money, to retain health information. And so in the same way, you could see Meta giving someone a laptop to perform work, enables someone to perform the same functions and to generate savings and quote, build a better life. And so the kind of the human benefits to the solution is palpable in that understanding.
And do you think that the increased wages will have a huge impact on the bottom line? Because that seems like a lot of money for the moderators. There's such a huge population that we have. What's the financial impact to the bottom line if we give everybody a raise?
I think it likely will have a huge impact to the bottom line, but it is over half of our employees. And so if we continue to pay low wages, and that means our over half of the employee base is in flux, and we're not sure if they're going to return to work. We're not sure if all of them are going to unionize. We're not sure if they're going to go to the press like they have. You've seen the cover of Time magazine. That's not great press. So it is a big cost, but it's also a big problem. And so Meta just should really address it now before it becomes even a bigger cost to the bottom line.
Okay, I think we're out of time for this. So everybody take a deep breath. You did a great job. Let me start off with some feedback and one suggestion. Your background screens and your slides are very consistent, very professional, and it's a really nice look. So well done on laying that out and positioning that as your consulting firm. The advice is, I want each of you to add something to your resume. Put in an item that says that you were selected by your university to compete in an international ethics competition. As somebody who has reviewed a lot of resumes, it will be noticed, and in the interview, people will ask you questions about it. And you've earned the honor of having that in your resume. Well done. Judges, feedback?
I always like learning from these competitions, and I felt like this was a treasure trove of information where I learned a lot more about practices outside of our country. I think anyone who follows Facebook and Meta knows that there's a lot of chinks in the armor in recent years for what they could be doing, should be doing to improve their reputation globally on our turf. So it was really interesting to me to learn about that as in the solutions that you laid out. I think having that action plan is really key, buttoning that up at the end. Only two minor suggestions. One, I like that 945 million. I would just blow it up to like nearly 1 billion. That 1 billion on a slide would just jump out to me like, wow, we're dealing with a lot of individuals who potentially could be harmed by this if the content is not properly manned, properly vetted. And then just me being nitpicky as I am sometimes, slide 13, just a wordsmith on psychiatrists. I would just amend that. But otherwise, I like the look of the deck, like the colors. I think the information is key. It wasn't overwhelming and easy to digest. And I think you presented a lot of compelling arguments for a potential board of directors. I know we aren't in character anymore, but potential board of directors to consider. Well done.
I agree. Well done in your presentation. You were very prepared for your slide presentation and the presentation to the board. Like Jason said, you had all of the facts well documented. And so I too learned a lot and now want to go research some more and see how I can help these people. But, you know, you did a lot of good information sharing about what the problem was. I think a tip would be to document on the slide a little bit more what your solutions are, because it was difficult to track with you what your recommendations were on the slide because they weren't there. And so I think especially because a lot of decks, especially for board meetings, are presented before the board. So they have opportunity to review the information before the session. You want to give them enough information to go off of so that they can really come and participate, and they're not going away with questions, but that they're leaving with answers. So that would be a recommendation as far as just beefing up the solution part of your presentation deck to align with all of the great information that you had to go along with it as you were speaking. And then the second tip would be to, as a trained facilitator, and I teach people how to facilitate, I would just, what you wrote and crafted was really, really strong. I would just practice it enough so that it doesn't come off red. So that you have an opportunity to engage more with the audience that you're speaking to, whether it's a board of directors or your team or whomever. Really try to internalize the information so that you can connect better and relate more, and really just leverage what you've written and not read what you've written. So overall, though, great job.
Joe?
Yeah, agree with Lori there completely. Having been to a lot of presentations and given quite a few, the ones that connect the best are the ones that don't feel like they're read. So I completely agree with that. Overall, I thought you guys did great. I learned a ton. I didn't feel preached to as a board member. I felt like, you know, you were offering viable solutions, and I thought you guys were totally professional. And I thought you did a great job answering the questions, which I think is the hardest part, because you don't know what we're going to ask you. You guys handled it pretty well. And I don't think you need to be afraid to, when you're going to answer a question, to contemplate it first. I noticed there was a pause on one, but it was a difficult, like, two-part question. So I think it was better. I probably would have paused myself and just contemplated, and then you guys did that and made a good answer. So good job with that.